Let me start off by saying that my thoughts are simply my opinion, and some might think they're controversial, and that's totally fine. I'm completely open to discussion, so let's talk about it. Is nostalgia killing music? There's a lot to unpack here, and I want to be clear that these ideas are malleable. I'm very open to what you think. My thoughts are based on trends and observations I've noticed from my perspective. It's no secret that in the past, record labels and music industry as a whole had immense power to push specific music onto listeners based on what they thought the audience wanted, or, more often, what they wanted to push. Naturally, we're receptive to music, and we tend to accept popular songs as long as they aren't completely intolerable. Besides record sales, the industry shaped musical tastes by controlling what was available, which in turn influenced our perception of what was considered successful and what wasn't. There is no doubt in my mind that this model of music distribution has led to generations of altered and, in some cases, unauthentic music appreciation. Personally, I make an effort to listen closely to all types of music, listening for elements to appreciate from the artists behind them. This allows me to enjoy a wide range of genres, but not everyone has that same approach. Some people develop an attachment to a specific genre or musical style, which can shape their taste in a way that makes it difficult to embrace newer sounds. When I was growing up, the radio played a huge role in shaping my musical influences because it was my primary source of exposure. As we all know, radio is slowly but surely becoming a relic of the past. I wouldn't be surprised if in the near future, cars no longer came with FM radios at all, especially if removing it makes production cheaper and Bluetooth streaming takes over completely. The age of radio has diminished significantly, and it's only a matter of time before it disappears altogether. That thought makes me feel privileged to have lived through an era where radio was the gold standard for discovering music. There was something special about hearing the voices of radio hosts on your favorite station, forming a connection with the DJs who curated your listening experience. Some of you might remember Delilah, a smooth, iconic voice of the radio. Even today, hearing her takes me back to a time when things felt a lot simpler. Of course, podcasting has taken the place of radio in many ways. Weekly scheduled podcasts follow a similar structure to radio programs, just on a different platform. But despite these similarities, the traditional radio experience holds a unique nostalgia that will be lost when it's gone forever. As someone who grew up listening to music curated by radio, I see the value in the freedom that platforms like Spotify and Apple Music provide. More music isn't inherently a bad thing. It's the access to the music that concerns me. We live in a unique era where we can instantly find any song, artist, or genre at any time. On a micro level, this is an incredible thing, but on a macro level, it could have unintended consequences. The millennial generation is now at an age where many are raising children. Naturally, parents want to share the music they love with their kids. In the past, a parent could only pass down music if they physically owned a record or CD. If they didn't, their children's exposure to that music was limited unless it was played on the radio or at a live performance. Today, that limitation doesn't exist. A parent can easily pull up any song from any decade and introduce their child to their favorite music. On the surface, I know this seems like a great thing. But what happens when a child becomes heavily influenced by their parents' music at a time when they are still forming their own musical identity? What if, instead of discovering their own taste, they're groomed to listen primarily to music from the past? This is similar to what radio did to previous generations. Certain artists, through repeated exposure, became ingrained in our musical memories, whether we wanted them or not. Now, with the possibility of more parents curating their child's listening habits, there's a real possibility that the younger generation will be shaped by nostalgia rather than innovation. If these children later become musicians, their influences will lean heavily on past decades. potentially stunting musical evolution. Of course, all artists draw inspiration from the past, but there's a difference between influence and replication. Exposure to new sounds is what pushes music forward. Looking back at past decades, each one had a distinct musical identity. The early 2000s were dominated by a fusion of hip-hop and rock, but as we entered the 2010s, things shifted. One of the biggest musical movements of that decade was the Chicago drill scene, which was one of the most creative and influential developments in modern hip-hop. I can't predict the future, but what I can see is a concerning trend. Currently, we're witnessing a resurgence of 90s pop and 80s alternative music. Right now, aside from hip-hop, these styles are dominating the industry, and I believe they will eventually surpass hip-hop as the leading genre. The data suggests this transition is already happening. As history has shown, genres lose their appeal over time, but they usually evolve into something new. However, instead of transforming, we seem to be regressing. Is this a reflection of dissatisfaction, or has technology disturbed the natural progression of music? Let me know what you think down below. Is this level of music recycling normal? Unfortunately, we don't have enough data to say for sure. The internet and social media have only been around for about 20 years or so we're still in uncharted territory when it comes to studying their long-term impact on music evolution. I believe that in the next 20 years, we'll have a much clearer picture of where music is headed. And if you're 10, 15, 20 years in the future and you're watching this video, let me know, was I right? One of the strangest things I've noticed is the purposeful blending of genres. While genre blending has always existed, it feels far more intentional now. In the past, artists experimented naturally, creating something unique in the process. Today, many artists seem to be blending genres simply for the sake of appearing innovative, even when it doesn't feel authentic. From the average listener's perspective, this might not be a problem, and in some cases, it isn't. Some artists excel, like Ghostmane or Brennan Savage. Others, like MGK, have switched genres completely. And then you have artists like Adam Calhoun, who mix genres in a way that is obviously calculated. Now, don't get me wrong, I enjoy his music a lot, but it's clear that he's playing into a trend. The blatant combination of genres in this fashion feels like an attempt at reaching a larger audience without the authenticity of what music is supposed to be as it evolves. The more we blend genres without true innovation, the less original our music becomes. The more we recycle old sounds, the more stagnant music becomes. Maybe I'm alone in thinking this, but that's my take. I love discussing all things music, so let me know what you think down in the comments.